Welcome to the Weekly Roar, coming live from the Lion's Den, helping new managers become great leaders and awesome bosses. And now, here's your host, Greg Storch.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Lion's Den. This is the Weekly Roar. It's great to have you back this week in the Lion's Den. A few weeks ago, I spoke about the different roles that we take on as a leader. Well, they weren't actually so much roles as they were traits. The premise was that leaders are made up of many slices that make up the entire leadership pie. There's also critical roles that a leader has to take on, and today I'm going to talk about one of them. Why is it so important for leaders to take on the role of a mentor? Today, I'll talk a little bit about that right here on the Weekly Roar. But before we jump into that, my name is Greg Storch, owner of Lion Enterprise, host of the Weekly Roar, and the founder of a worldwide bartered coaching program called The Helping Hand. I'm a certified professional leadership coach and a certified leadership speaker and trainer. Now, if you want to catch more of the Weekly Roar, you can find all of my video resources on my website at lion-enterprise.com. Go to the Lion's Pride Library and you can check out all of my video resources right there. All right, everyone, let's jump into this and let's talk about the leader as a mentor. Now, let me start out by saying one of the most important responsibilities that we have as a leader is to develop other leaders. The true test of a good leader is how successful those they lead become in their own leadership. One of the ways a leader does that is by mentoring those who show the potential and desire to grow into a leader. Leadership and mentoring, they really go hand in hand. If you're a leader, which we all are in one way or another, then you also have the role of being a mentor as well. Now, let's face it, the reality about leadership is that leadership doesn't have much to do with the leader rather than those they lead. The litmus test of our leadership is ultimately found in the success of those we lead. You can pulse check your leadership with one very simple question, and that is whether or not those you are leading are better off because of your leadership. Once we agree to assume a leadership role, we inherit with that title and position the responsibility for the care and well-being of those we're leading. Now, some leaders may look at that as a burden of their leadership, but good leaders will always see it as a benefit to their leadership. Now, if you ask me, I see mentoring as part of my job description. Mentoring is a tool I use to help develop the leaders around me. It's not only required as part of the role of leadership, but it's really an obligation. Leaders are obligated to develop people to the best of their ability with the ultimate goal of helping others reach their full potential. Now, in the corporate world, that effort is commonly called succession planning. That's when companies create a strong pipeline of leaders who are designed to take over when the top leader retires or, worse yet, unexpectedly leaves the position for whatever reason. Now, done right, and that unexpected or expected vacancy in the leadership position won't result in moving backwards as long as the leaders in that organization are actively mentoring those they lead. Well, that doesn't mean everyone, of course. Leaders aren't spending their day helping every single individual on the team grow their leadership skills. Actually, on the contrary, good leaders know where to spend their time. They know who's showing promise and frankly, an interest in becoming a better leader. Leadership mentoring gives prospective leaders an environment where a path to leadership is set, discussed, and even broken down into actionable steps with a leader who has walked the path before them. Imagine if you could just go back in time and speak to your younger self about leadership. You'd probably have some pretty great advice to give yourself. I know I'd be able to provide some time-saving advice to my younger self for sure. Well, that's what mentoring does for those who are growing new leaders. What I've learned about mentoring over the past few years is that mentoring is actually an interactive sport. It involves two players, the mentor and, of course, the mentee. Both of those roles have responsibilities in the mentoring relationship, so I want to touch on them briefly. See, I see a lot of transitioning service members, and they're talking about the need for a mentor. And I like to take the opportunity when I hear that to speak to them about their responsibility as a mentee when they find that mentor. See, many people tend to think of mentoring as a one-way communication tool where someone with experience tells someone with less experience what they should do, and that advice is based on the mentor's previous experience. They've walked the talk. But it's not just the mentor who takes on the responsibility in the relationship. The mentee, the person who's being mentored, also has some responsibilities that I want to point out real quick. When asking somebody to be your mentor, preparation is key. Remember, these are experienced leaders and they're busy and their time is limited and very valuable. So don't waste it. When you're preparing for your first meeting with your mentor, be able to communicate what you're trying to accomplish through the mentoring relationship. And remember, preparation is key. So prior to the meeting, be sure to write down your questions and make sure they're well thought out. Now, after your session is over with your mentor, ask permission to seek a follow-up meeting, but only after you've executed any advice the mentor has given you. Note what you were asked to do. Did you do it? How did it go? What were the results that you got? If you didn't do it, why not? Be ready to discuss those things at your next meeting. Now, once you've taken action and you provide updates to your mentor, you ask if you can ask any additional questions. But be sure you've taken action on the first meeting before you move forward. And then the last thing that I want to add before I share some tips with you today is that I want to throw a relatively newer concept out there that we don't focus on too much, in my opinion. And that's the concept of reverse mentoring. That's right, reverse mentoring. This is a concept that was actually brought into the mainstream by Jack Welch himself. The leaders who mentor can also benefit from the mentoring relationship. Even though mentors may be senior from an experience perspective and maybe even an age perspective, they don't have all the answers. Keep an open mind as a mentor, and you'll quickly realize that there's a lot to be learned from the mentoring interactions with mentees of all ages and experience. This does a lot for sharpening your leadership EQ. So let me say this. Leaders should not only embrace mentoring, they should champion it. If you want to take your leadership mentoring to the next level, then let me share just a few ways to improve your efforts. Now, I'm going to start this off by speaking from the perspective of the cornerstone of leadership, Go ahead, say it with me. That would be trust. There has to be trust in any relationship, but especially in a mentoring relationship, or it just won't work. It might start out okay, but it certainly is not going to last. Now, any relationship between a mentor and a mentee that's not built upon the foundation of mutual trust and respect won't be productive. And I guarantee you, it won't be around very long before each of you are seeking a different person. Now, obviously, being a mentor doesn't have anything to do with being arrogant or condescending to show how much experience you have or how much you know. And conversely, to point out just how little the person you're mentoring knows. I've shared this before, but one of my favorite quotes comes from Roosevelt. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. When it comes to mentoring, nothing could be more accurate. In addition to trust, if you're going to take on the role of a mentor, then the second thing you should do is you must understand the importance of being committed. Commitment. The person you mentor is only going to put in the same effort and energy as you do as their mentor. If you're not totally committed to them, what do you think you're going to get in return? Yeah, a bunch of lip service with no real action or progress. A great mentoring relationship is really a two-way street. Both people have to be invested in the process. You can't have one without the other. As a mentor, we can't be committed to the process and provide excellent advice when we're working with someone who isn't willing to invest at the same level in the process. If you're going to mentor someone, be sure not to waste your time on someone who isn't committed to the process, and don't start the process if you can't commit yourself. I read this advice in a mentoring article about a year ago, and it's stuck with me ever since. So I want to share it with you today. The author of that article wrote, "Those who seek shelter in the wisdom of sound counsel must also be willing to take refuge there." Man, I love that piece of advice. All right, speaking of advice, this last thing I want to share with you is one of the best pieces of advice I've ever received. So I'm going to share it with you now. If you're going to mentor someone who shows promise as a leader, then you better walk the talk. In other words, if you plan to mentor someone, you should have a mentor yourself. You have heard me ad nauseum talk about several of my mentors. John Maxwell, Zig Ziglar. Who are some of your mentors? You better be ready to rattle off a few names, or at least one. Having your own mentor will make you much more relatable to your mentee. And make sure that you share with them. Be sure to tell your own mentee how much you believe in mentoring, and even share some of the benefits that you've enjoyed from having your own mentor. You gotta walk the talk. Without a doubt, the practice of mentoring has the power to shape better leaders. Not only does being a mentor benefit the mentee, but it can also help leaders be more effective in their own jobs, whether that's by building more empathy, providing more insight into the day-to-day of their employees, or practicing critical skills like coaching and giving feedback. So when it comes to leadership mentoring, remember those three things. Build your mentoring relationship on trust. Commit yourself to the process of mentoring, and make sure that you're walking the talk. Those three tips should get you going on the right path to building a solid mentoring relationship. Mentoring is super important for us as leaders because it brings the best out of the people we lead. It's always been a powerful way of developing skills, building confidence, and learning from others. So it only makes sense that it's a highly effective way to develop other leaders. If you're looking for the win-win, then develop your leadership mentoring skills to not only give your promising rising leadership stars an opportunity to learn from the journey of those who have been there and done that, but take advantage of the opportunity to hone your own skills to become a better leader yourself. All right, that does it for me today. Another micro lesson in leadership. The importance of not only being a leader, but the leader as a mentor. Thank you all for supporting me and joining me again today in the Lion's Den. If you want to keep running to the roar, then join me again next week. All you have to do is just come on back to the Lion's Den next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Until we meet again, remember, be powerful, but stay poised just like a lion. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching the Weekly Roar live event at lionenterprise.com. If you enjoyed this video, please tell others to join us each week here in the Lion's Den. Thanks again, and see you next week.